I'm going to come down. Let's get a little closer. All right, how's everyone today? We're feeling blessed? Yeah. So am I. So am I. You know, it's always great to be in the house of the Lord. I always feel just kind of a revival in my spirit every time that I enter into a house of worship. No matter where I am, you know, it's just an uplifting feeling. Feedback, so I'm going to try and adjust this a little bit so I don't hurt everyone's ears. You know, this message that came to me, sometimes messages will bite. And what I mean by that is sometimes you get a little convicted when you hear these certain words. And understand that when I say some things that I've always told you that I speak them directly from the Word. I don't deviate. I do not believe in deviating from the Bible whatsoever. So, if you are feeling a little convicted in some of the things that I say, don't take that as a negative thing. Accept it. And when I say accept it, it means that receive it and know that this is something that maybe you've gone through, maybe you've done, maybe you've seen someone else close to you who you love, and you just don't want that to continue. Amen? Amen. So I got to thinking about how to deliver this message here, and it was really the title of the message. And it came to me about wee hours in the morning. And I got to thinking about a dog and a dog's tail. I don't know why that came, well, I know now why it came about, but a dog's tail. You ever see a dog's tail? I used to, when I was younger, I'd see a dog's tail and it's just wagging out of control. Just nonstop wagging. No good reason, it's just wagging. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they just can't control it. Sometimes they chase their tails because they see it. And I got to thinking, that's what happens with our tongue sometimes. It gets out of control. We can't control it because some of us don't want to control it. Some of us feel that we're saying the right things to make ourselves a little bit higher than where we should be. So the title of my message today is the Wagging Tongue. You know, I was doing a little research and I found out that there are in between, and I'm not going to debate this, but anywhere between 639 to 850 muscles in the human body. The tongue is comprised of 8 muscles altogether. And it's relatively small compared to the other muscles in the body, yet it can do so much damage to our loved ones, to people that we don't know, to countries, to our entire world. And just think about that. Something so small is that powerful that it really should be contained sometimes. Amen? Amen. You know, James 3, and I'll tell you right now, we're going to stay in kind of we're going to go to the right. We're going to stay in the New Testament just for a little bit. But then we're going to go to one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's going to be in the left, in the Old Testament. So James 3, 2 and 3 says, "For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths so that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body." Now, listen to this. "If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body." We know that we are not perfect. Yet if we strive to get to where that perfect in Jesus, we strive to get there, imagine what could happen if we watch our words that come out of our mouths. The example that the Bible gives is putting bits in horses' mouths so they may obey. You realize that when you're riding, I don't know if anyone, look, this is Texas now, and I love to ride horses, been riding since I was young. But if you understand how a horse works and how to control a horse, that bit is in the horse's mouth. If you move to the left, the horse's head will turn to the left. There goes the entire body of the horse. Such a small part of the body, you know how large a horse is, but such a small part of the body will turn that entire horse. If you turn to the right, if you just kind of pull just a little bit to the right, the horse will go to the right. Now I say that to say that words change and affect our attitudes. They also affect how others view us. If you're walking around and you're saying, you know, I don't like myself too much. Your head is down. And people are looking at that. They can see your body language. They can see what you're putting into your own self. You're speaking that into yourself. You understand? You are speaking just negative thoughts into yourself, and therefore outwardly people see that and they receive it that way. So if we learn to control what we're saying, then we can truly be more uplifting to not only ourselves, but to others as well. I do believe that we were put here to be a blessing, not only to the Lord and just be delight in Him, but also into others. And so when we're speaking, understand what we're saying. You know, I look around and I listen to what's going on in the world and today, and I just hear so many words of discourse, so many hurt feelings out there, so many things that are happening, and I know that you guys see these things as well. Let me tell you how things affect someone. For the most part, I'm a very, very happy and blessed individual, but there was a time when I realized, this was probably about a year and a half ago or so, I started realizing what was going on. I was watching too much news. And I started to kind of take that was going on in the news, and it was kind of infiltrating my own self. And I started to see a change in myself that I was starting to think, what is going on? Is it even worth going out meeting with people anymore? Because things have just gotten so sad and just so out of control. And so when I say that, I mean that words were affecting myself. Words were coming to me, and I was thinking, this is just sad. And all of a sudden, I began to get sad. You know, there are so many words. People don't realize how important words are. You look to your children, and you see them. They're looking up to you for guidance. Very simple to just give them just a hug and just kind of tell them I love them. I love you, you know. Growing up, I got a chance to experience the love in our household, and it was the love that people, you know, actually expressed it and they said it. These are things that we all need to start to do, speak into our lives, speak into our families' lives. You ever wonder why you see some people that, you know, you look at a family and you go, man, that's a beautiful looking family. Man, they look like they don't have any problems whatsoever. They're just gliding through life. It's not that they don't have problems, it's that they speak positive thoughts into each other. They speak positive with each other. It's not that we're not going to have these problems in our lives, but when you start to speak positive, you start to realize that God is upon you, and you share that godly love with others, then your whole life will change. Your family's lives will change. Do you realize this is a generational thing that happens? You know, I've listened to certain families in the past, and I've looked at their family history, and I recognize that, well, if dad was having was beating mom, or if dad was talking you know, in a bad way to mom, then the children start to receive that. Sometimes the young girls become women, and they decide that, well, that's the right thing to do, and they absorb that. Sometimes the young boys become young men, and they realize that, that's what I saw, so I'm going to continue to do that. These are things that are going on in households today. And as I say this, as I'm speaking, remember, if this is something that you are experiencing or you have experienced, it's not a bad thing to be convicted by it or to realize it. It's one of those things where we just need to kind of jump out of ourselves and say, you know what, praise God, I recognize it. I need to change. Amen? Amen. We need to start breaking these generational curses that are upon our families right now. And simply some simple things to do and to say is just to speak in positive tones to our children, to our friends, to our spouses, to our loved ones outside the home. James 3:10 and 11 says, "With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the image of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not be so." You understand what they're saying there? They're saying that, look, out of the same mouth, that same tongue that will say, "Bless you, my brother and sister. I thank you, my brother and sister," will turn around in that same instance and curse you later. How can this be? Why should it be? We need to change these things. You cannot sit there and tell me, give me a kiss on my cheek with one time, and then on my other cheek you're spitting on me. That ought not be. There was a saying back in the day that says, "Do you kiss your child with that mouth?" You guys ever heard that? You kiss your child with that mouth? We've got to watch what we say, because when I say this, when I say kiss your child with that mouth, believe me, they're watching. Did you hear me say generational curse? Yes. We've got to stop that. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. I talk about, we're all in the same walk together, and we might be in different stages, but we're walking that same walk. Right now, this stage might be for you right now, but guess what? You can turn that around and stop doing what you're doing. Try something different. If you recognize that things are going wrong in your life and you've been doing the same thing time and time again, try something different. Stop sitting there saying, there's nothing that I can do. I've done this for so long, I've lived for so long, and there's nothing that I can do. There's absolutely something that you can do. Try something different. I have an opportunity from time to time to counsel individuals, I counsel families, and as I said, I look at what's going on in the family, that family dynamic, but I don't just look at that family themselves. I look at who are your friends, who are you associated with, what was your family life growing up? What does your family look like? Sometimes I've told my daughter this from growing up. I said, family is great and they're near and dear to me, but sometimes, listen to me, sometimes we have to recognize that family member that needs a little more help. I'm not saying that we push them aside, but sometimes we have to love them from a distance. Yes. Amen. That might sound harsh, but that does not mean that we don't love them. It just means sometimes we have to love them from a distance. You cannot invite certain things into your house. You cannot, it's the same thing that when we go, I was telling you a story not too long ago where we prayed over our house. You cannot invite certain spirits into your house. The same way you cannot invite certain people into your house all the time, because that's what changes things. All of a sudden you become that. I used to teach my daughter this all the time. What you say and what you do and who you associate yourself with, there you will be also. You understand that? What you do, what you say, and who you associate yourself, you will be that person as well. And it may not be how you were raised, but guess what? When you start to hang around things, I can tell you when I was a young child, I told you that I was called the PK, the preacher's kid. But I started to hang around some folks that were doing some things that were not quite right. These were some of the gangs in South Central LA, and I thought, you know what, that's cool. That's how I want to be. That's not how I was raised, but that's how I wanted to be, because that's what was going on in the school systems out there. And that's a whole other message when I come to talk about the school system. We have to understand that you need to separate yourself from certain things so that you can be that person that God truly calls you to be. God does not want you to sit there and just sit on the sidelines while things are going bad or things are going down in a certain community or in a certain job. He doesn't want you to stand on the sidelines there. You need to get up and speak out sometimes. This is something that I've learned over the course of several years now, that instead of sitting there being quiet, we need to start speaking up. Use that tongue for a better purpose. Again, something relatively so small of a muscle in the human body has so much power in it. We've got to change what we do. We've got to change how we think. Therefore, the words that come out of our mouths will change also. And guess what? You will begin to see a change in your family. You will begin to see a change in your friends. You will begin to see a change in the world. I have a friend of mine that started, he posed something to me, and he said, you know, there's so much lying and untruths being told all around. And I said, wow. He said, you know, if it just one thing, if we don't recognize this one thing that you can do, it seems small, but it's one thing. And he pointed out a simple example. He says, you ever get those phone calls and your kid picks up the phone and says, you know, they don't know who it is, but you really don't want to talk, and you tell them I'm not here. That's a simple lie that was told. Tell them I'm not here. But guess what you just did? You just taught and invited your child how to tell that lie. Very simple. And then it just goes on and on. There was an old commercial, and it's one of those things that my wife and I, because we grew up in this generation, we remember these things. I think it was back during in the 80s sometimes, or sometime in the 80s when this commercial, it was about drugs and the Say No to Drugs type of campaign. But one of those commercials stood out to both she and I in that when the child was pressured into saying, where did he learn what he knows, he shot back at the father and said, I learned it from you, okay? I learned it from you. He's telling the father what he learned from them. So when we start to change what we're doing, when I say change, believe me, if you can say so much with the tongue, you can affect someone negatively or you can affect someone positively. Gossip seems to come out of mouths all the time. And a lot of times people want to associate gossip with women. But let me tell you something. Men know how to gossip as well. Men, you are not off the hook when it comes to this. I've been guilty of doing such things sometimes. You know, you think we call it just regular talking, and that's just not it all the time. It's gossip. Just call it what it is. And I am one that I will call it what it is. When you turn something, and people sometimes want to speak in gossip because they want to see someone do poorly. They enjoy seeing someone doing worse than what they are. And the sad thing, let me tell you, worse than what they are, meaning that we're not so good ourselves. Yet it's always good to see someone do worse than what we are. So you tend to spread those things out. We have this first and third Sunday, we have a group meeting, and we sit there, we have food, and we, get into the Word. And then also there's people, it's a sharing time. And in this group, they borrowed the slogan from Vegas, what happens in group stays in group. There are things that go on, and people tell some really hurtful things that are going on in their life. And it's just it's maybe about 10, 15 of us. And I can tell you that at no given time have I ever stepped outside a group and told what's going on in group. It's not there for the purpose of sitting there going, well, look at brother so-and-so, look at sister so-and-so, oh, they're doing terrible. Let me go spread this gossip out and let other people know how bad they're doing. That's not the purpose. The purpose there for a group is to uplift each other, help guide them, help give them situations, because I guarantee you, whatever has gone on there, a lot of us have already gone through it ourselves. And instead of keeping them down. We need to uplift each other and begin to talk positively and speak positively into their lives. You know, when you spread gossip, it continues on and it gets infectious. Other people start to take that gossip and they start to say, well, I'm going to spread some more gossip over here. It may not be the same thing here, but they pick up on someone else and they think, oh, this is just great. This is juicy news here. You know, I've got to tell it. They are doing a disservice to that individual, and in turn, they're doing a disservice to themselves, and they're doing a disservice to the Lord. We've got to stop that. If someone comes to you in confidence and tells you what's going on with themselves, if you cannot help the problem, close your mouth. If you cannot help the problem, close your mouth. Silence your tongue. There's times when I sit back and I just watch. And it's not because, I think Pastor Danny, we're sitting somewhere, he said, man, you're quiet. It's not that I'm not listening, I'm actually really listening intently. I'm paying attention to what's going on with an individual. I'm learning that individual. Because sometimes, you know, there might be a word that may come to me and sometimes there's not, but I want to make sure at that time that that's God's word that comes to me before I speak out of turn. If I cannot say something, then I will not. If I don't have that word, I'm not going to speak at that time. I need to wait for that right moment. Because imagine how much damage you can do to an individual when you say the wrong thing. Yesterday was a time when I had to visit someone in the hospital who just lost her husband yesterday morning. And there were a few words that came, but at that moment in the hospital, there was a time to be silent. And I thank God that He woke me up to the fact that I needed to be silent at certain times. I needed to just be there for the individual and grieve with them. For me to say some of these words of condolence at the time, it was not the right time. But what I recognize is that just the fact for Kat and myself being there, she recognized that the love was there. Amen. That we were there for her, and that was what she needed at that time. So again, sometimes you have to hold your tongue. Now on the left of the Bible in Proverbs, and I'll tell you this is one of my favorite books of the Bible. I love Proverbs. Proverbs to me is one of those things where you can kind of go through life and there's an answer right there in Proverbs for basically anything that you have going on in your life. Proverbs 17:28 says, even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered wise or perceptive. Imagine that. As a child, I used to love to talk. And I think that most of us go through it. I recognize this even in our child growing up and watching the different stages. That as a child, we tend to want to talk and talk and talk, and we know everything. Do we not? If my mom or dad would come to me and say, hey, you did this, and I say, no, this is why I did it. I got to explaining things. It got to a point where they said he's going to be a lawyer when he grows up because he can try to explain himself out of anything. And that wasn't the truth because they realized that what I was saying made no sense. Made no sense. So it says, even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. You ever sit in a meeting or any gathering, and you watch someone that's just talking, and you recognize they're talking, but they're not saying anything. It's meaningless. Sometimes those individuals, they just like to speak because they want to be heard. They feel like they want to be recognized, but they really don't have anything to add to a conversation, nothing of purpose, nothing of substance. And so as they're speaking, you're sitting there going, I really wish they would just stop. They're holding this meeting over way too long. I was listening to my daughter speak here recently. She was in class, and she came out and she said, we could have been out of there a long time ago, but this person just kept talking, and the teacher was getting frustrated. Talking so much that the teacher was getting frustrated, but they were holding up the class. And if you've ever been in school and you have someone that's talking, but they're not saying anything, and you're not getting anything out of it, the only thing that you want to do is just leave. You don't want to be there anymore. But then there are people, again, that just want to talk to hear themselves speak, even though they're not saying anything. They don't know how to hold their tongue. We've got to learn how to hold our tongue and just kind of listen. Listen for a moment. Learn. Don't be that child. God says the Bible says put away childish things. We've got to be able to put away these childish things and these childish thoughts that we know everything. We're going to be able to teach everything to everybody and just have the right word at the right time. That does not work all the time. As I begin to close here, I just want to leave you with this, and this is something that we need to begin to start doing ourselves. It says that in Proverbs 18, 20 and 21, a man's stomach shall be satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. From the produce of his lips he shall be filled. Whichever that way will be, because listen to this now. When you go past that comment to verse 21, it says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it